TYT would like to thank Squarespace for making possible our coverage of the 2017 Oslo Freedom Forum. Whether you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. You can start your free trial at squarespace.com/TYT and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Joined now by Grace Jo, a North Korean defector with an amazing and very difficult life story. The tale of her efforts to get outside of North Korea, eventually to China, and eventually, after a great deal of struggle, to the United States, where she now works alongside her sister in an organization to try to ease that path for other defectors from North Korea. So thank you for joining us, Grace. We really appreciate
Thank you very much for inviting
hearing
me.
about your story. So I've read and listened to multiple interviews with you, and it struck me that as part of your activism, you've talked about the need to sort of educate people about what it's like to have left North Korea, what it's like to have grown up there, and that people around 2000, 2001 didn't really know much or really care much about that experience. And so you've had to tell your life story many, many times, which has to be incredibly traumatic, I imagine. And so I apologize in advance, but for our audience, we would like to know somewhat of what you've been through, how you came from growing up in North Korea to eventually getting to the United States.
Sure, no problem. Well, first of all, I really appreciate for your great work, and thank you very much for inviting me to this stage. So I really thankful for everyone here today, and also for the audience as well. As a North Korean defector and one of the survivors from my family, I think it's the mission for me and for my sister to tell our stories. I mean, every time we tell our story, of course, it's heartbreaking and it's very difficult for us to, forget or overcome the time, like thinking and emotionally as well. But I feel very happy when a lot of people, they know about the reality from North Korea, and we can raise awareness in this democracy world and internationally. Then I believe we will come up with great ideas, and we will help more North Korean defectors who are still suffering in North Korea. So that's my goal, and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you sharing it. So for people who don't necessarily know anything about what it's like in North Korea, what was the experience that sort of drove you and your family, principally your mother, to make the decision to eventually leave, to attempt to leave?
Well, the first escape happened in 1998, and my father, my grandmother, and my younger brothers and sisters, they all died because of starvation. Well, my father, he died while he was transferring to the prison, but also because of the starvation. The guards tortured him, but without giving him water or any food while he was transferring. So it was really tragic story. We, as a family member and as a daughter and wife, to hear that story. But that's not only one of my family's story. There's so many other North Korean peoples. They are carrying different type of stories with the pain and tear. So what I really hope is, because of our story, as an example, we want to tell the world that there are so many people are suffering in North Korea, and they are losing their family members, and they are dying because of the food. And as you can see in Norway, and last night we also had a really big and fancy dinner in the Grand Hotel. But when I eat those food, I also think about my hometown. Oh my God, this is really big, huge festival. Because as a human being, we have to live, and because of we have to eat to live, right? But because of corn and rice and potatoes, even though we cannot find all those simple food in North Korea, that's why we are dying. So this is really serious human rights issue, I believe. That's why I try to raise our voice. And one of one of our goal as remaining family members, my mother and my older sister, they have big heart toward our people. But we don't have any political power, we don't have any knowledge or technique, so we don't do a lot of things, but only we can do is tell our story to world people and let them know. So I feel very appreciate to the audience who are willing to hear our story.
I think that a lot of Americans think that you make the journey out of North Korea, you get to China, and hey, you're free. But that's not actually the case. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it seems like China is actively working alongside North Korea to send people back. And so in fact, you didn't escape North Korea once, you escaped North Korea multiple times because you were forced to.
Yes. Well, when my family escaped to China at the first time, we had a lot of expectation. We thought after we come to China, we can live there freely. We can eat food and wear clothes, and we can travel. But however, after we lived in China for 4 years, my mother and my sister, they sent back to us in China. And we realized, oh, we are not belong in China. We cannot live here, even though we can eat food and we can get help from village people, but that's not mean we are part of them. So that's why we thought we need to leave. We wanted to leave, and we wanted to live as a human being. Then what we should do? The only way is we escape China again to other country who can give us freedom. So that's why my mother tried to take us to South Korea for many times, but every time we tried, we failed. So we got caught by the Chinese government and we sent back to North Korea, and we suffered in imprisonment. But yes, the Chinese government, I don't know why, it's always been a question, but why the Chinese government is working with North Korean government? Yeah. What they are getting from North Korean government? I'm sure Chinese government, without any benefits from North Korean government, how come they keep working with them instead of working with the USA and other international world? But they still, at this moment, they are still caught North Korean people and sent back to North Korea. They never consider us as refugees, so that's my heartbreaking.
Donald Trump met with the president of China and had to be taught that China's not going to just deal with North Korea by itself. A lot of Americans think, well, why doesn't China just shut down North Korea? But it's not obviously as simple as that. And it reminds me in some ways, like back in America's past, when we had slave states and free states, but many of the free states were complicit in it, that slaves would escape and finally get to freedom and be sent back. And so those sorts of situations still happen in a lot of parts of the world. But again, you finally get out of China, so you've taken another big step, and then you get to the United States, which is difficult. There's only a few hundred North Koreans that have been able to settle in the United States, correct?
Yes, currently it's about 200 people as legal refugees in the U.S.
Which is a very small percentage of all the North Korean defectors.
It's really small. It's really small. Even we compare with the Vietnamese refugees and other Middle East refugees, is nothing. And it's been 10 years. The U.S. government is accepting the North Korean refugees. And while I was working for NKNSA, I found out there are so many North Korean defectors that are waiting at the third-party country to become accepted by the U.S. government. But they are waiting 2 years, 3 years, and they don't know when they are able to come. So I actually asked some of the foreign affairs employees and trying to ask them why all those people cannot come into America as soon as possible. But well, they say they are trying their best, but somehow as advocates, I can see the results in fast path. So that's a little unfortunate. But I really hope the U.S. government can accept more refugees in short-term term, and I hope the Trump administration can do a little active way to help North Korean refugees. And I believe when the Trump president went to China and when he mentioned about North Korean issue, I think he didn't mention about North Korean defectors, but
Yeah.
just mentioned about the country issue. But the main problem is Chinese government has to stop the repatriation. If that's solved, I mean, every problem will be solved automatically through North Korean defector issues. There's not going to have torture, there's not going to have imprisonment in North Korea. The human rights issues will be solved. And a lot of international group will help North Korean defectors when Chinese government cooperate with us. So that's my current hope and goal, to pursue Chinese government to stop the repatriation.
So I also wanted to ask you about the experience of finally being in the United States, and you're now helping out other North Koreans who might find the transition from like living and growing up in North Korea to suddenly being in the United States to be very, very difficult. You weren't necessarily trained in that sort of culture and independence. I've read in some of your interviews you've talked about that. So you've come here to sort of tell about your experience, to try to get more focus on the experience of the refugees, the experience of growing up in North Korea. What would you want our audience, which is generally American, to know? Are there any misconceptions about the refugees or about North Korea? What would you like them to take away from your story?
Well, North Korea has tons of issues, like, for example, nuclear weapon issues and missile tests and all those military powers. So even this week, yes. So through the media, we see all those, strong and very aggressive reactions from North Korea. But I really hope the Americans and the international people will see that not only part of military or political issue only, but also think about in that country there's a lot of mom and dads and little kids. Of course, every country, like, people are living, so we do have love stories and we do have romantic stories as well. So I want to tell in North Korea a lot of romantic stories and a lot of love stories as well. So through my story and through my experiences, I hope people know that in North Korea people need love, yeah, and people need care, and people need attention. That's the message I would like to ask people.
Yeah, I think it would be very easy to hear about the details of your story and to think about, well, look at the repression, which is obviously there, but it's also about a family coming together and fighting under incredible odds and against incredible threats to survive. Yes, so thank you for sharing your story. Very inspiring, both what you and your family have gone through and what you're continuing to do to try to help others like you.
Thank you very much.